Matthew, can I say that 1 second? Please. I don't think there was much on the agenda, Mr. Chairman.
Here we go.
Motion approved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Minutes are adopted. Item number 1, under new business, capital projects, budget proposal presentation. Mayor Maddox, you're up on deck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is, it's hard to believe that April has rolled around and it's another year of presenting capital projects. You will see in this budget presentation, and it's only going to be the spreadsheets that you see in front of you today. There is no recommendation at this time for water and sewer. That doesn't mean that we do not have a need for capital projects. We want to recommend that to the council once we get through the bond refinancing on those projects. As you know, the council, because of our outstanding work of A&F and the ability to cash flow, we've had the ability to cash flow many of the projects in the 10-year plan. When we're reimbursed from that cash flow, then we will be in a better position to give you a recommendation on the water and sewer capital. That being said, if that's something as part of the next few weeks as we go into the budget itself, you would like a further briefing on, we would love to provide it to you. It's just that you don't see any recommendation today because frankly, we want to get to the reimbursement stage before we give you any definite numbers to look at.
All right.
So I want to start first with this sheet here. This is our recommendation for capital projects within the general fund. We oftentimes mention the general fund RFFI, but that also makes up other funding sources like Alabama Trust Fund, gas tax, etc. So first, let me start with the general fund RFFI. Funds that are available this year is $14.5 million. The city's surplus for fiscal year 2024 was a little over $19 million. By city ordinance, we dedicate a portion of that back into reserve. And so the available funds that we have this year is $14.5 million. Ms. Standards will go through that calculation with you at some point in the budget hearings that you schedule moving forward. Ms. Standards, anything you want to add to that?
No, sir, that's, we can go over the surplus calculation, where the surplus comes from, and then the set-asides that the mayor mentioned in detail during one of the work sessions.
But a very good year, $19 million surplus. So very proud of the work of this council, the work of our department heads, and the work of A&F.
And all of that surplus is off general fund?
Yes, sir.
So 10%, check.
Could that go
Yes,
into the
sir.
RSA?
200 million general fund,
The
19 and change surplus.
Yes, sir, you're about to see it.
Okay, good.
Yes, sir. So I've aligned the recommendations to you in least to most expensive. And so some of this is to go ahead and pre-purchase items that frankly take a long time to get here. So first you'll see for CFG mower replacements, again, $35,000, a very small amount, but knowing it takes a while to get mowers in, knowing that we're going to be picking up large areas like maybe Wrights Ferry Road and other areas, we want to go ahead and get those pre-purchased. Next is ADA compliance. This is the compliance we work with as part of our ADA plan to make Tuscaloosa ADA compliant. This is again adding money into that budget for compliance, sidewalks and things of that nature. The first major project is the Riverwalk Bridge replacement. You've seen one bridge replacement already on the Southern Riverwalk. This is to get another bridge replaced. The cost of doing that's about $85,000.
Which one is this, Mayor?
Eric, which one is it?
The one closest to Morris Springs.
Okay.
The next is the Lake Tuscaloosa Bridge Engineering. This bridge is due to be replaced over the next 5 to 10 years. This is the bridge that's just, I want to say not north of the dam, I guess west of the dam, but as you're going up the hill, you cross the dam, you go up the hill, there's a bridge. This is the replacement of that bridge. We'd like to go ahead and get that engineered, knowing that at some point in our bridge replacement plan, we will need to move forward with that. The next is Powell Gym. As you've heard me recommend, this is really the part of a two-part recommendation. One is that the city take over the maintenance of Powell Gym itself. The city is currently building the Powell outdoor courts. We want to, and the city will maintain those courts. We want to go ahead and take over the maintenance of the Powell Gym itself. Frankly, it hasn't been kept up to our standard. There are things within that gym, from refurbishing the floor to the roof repair, other issues within that building that need to be taken care of. The bones of that building are fantastic, and it's a building near and dear to many people's hearts, including mine. We also believe that the outreach program within Powell is phenomenal. And the difference it's really made in the McKenzie Court area of Tuscaloosa, although there are students and young people who participate, it has really proven very, very successful. And it also has a nonprofit arm that gets other people involved as well. Any questions on that? And again, we can go in.
I hope we'll kind of let you run through the whole list and then come back to.
That sounds good.
To make sure we get through it.
The next is escrow cameras for McWright's Ferry and MLK. The city escrows money every time we put up, as part of every new project, and I believe we started doing this about 2 years ago. Every time we put up a camera system as part of a project, we escrow, or we ask the council to escrow funds away for its eventual replacement. The goal is that it's easy to install those cameras. It's replacing the cameras or the servers or the networks and everything else. This is a fund that's created that when those cameras need to be replaced, that we have the money available for the maintenance of those cameras and the replacement of those cameras. The next is a seed grant. I think the EDA has made you all aware of this. It's a partnership between the city of Tuscaloosa, the city of Northport, Tuscaloosa County, and the EDA. It is a grant to look at the economic development possibilities of the acreage that's adjacent to the Tuscaloosa National Airport. So the county, the city, and Northport are all putting in $150, should roll my ruler, $125,000 to the project itself. Again, we can have Justice Smith with EDA come and brief you on this. It's a really good partnership that the EDA is.
That was to be able to get the state money. That's a match, right?
That's
Community-
correct.
The community, so you're basically doubling your money. Or putting up, we're getting, is it $500,000 wall? Something like that.
Yeah.
$500,000 to $600,000, I think.
And this is just a design plan. It doesn't commit the city or the county or Northport to any improvements. But we talked about before the opportunities out there at Tuscaloosa National Airport, especially if we could have community partners. So maybe this is a good step in the right direction. The next is striping general refresh. One of the things I know from many of you in this room that we talk about in our monthly meetings is just getting striping done. So this would be a good replenishing of that fund. I think last year in the operating fund we budgeted $50,000. So this would be 3 times the amount of striping. And as we talked last week about the economic challenges that we're facing, things like striping and things like that can be done. They don't cost a lot of money, but yet have a larger impact that I think is positive. The next recommendation is to upgrade the landscaping that's in the current University Boulevard section of Alberta. I know this is something that Mr. Tyner and I have talked about. The landscaping plan that was done was really designed in the mid-1990s, was installed in the early 2000s. It was before the advent of having horticulturists on staff, of design plans. It needs a total refresh, but to do it the right way is going to cost in the neighborhood of $250,000. That if you want it to be sustainable, survive and be sustainable in years ahead. The next recommendation is $250,000 to design and access off of 82 into Julia Tutwiler Drive. As you recall, the state of Alabama, as part of the Woolsey-Pinnell Bridge Replacement Project, had recommended eliminating the access point into Julia Tutwiler Drive. We have been able to reach, at this point, more or less a handshake agreement with the state to move forward with creating an access point from 82 into Julia Tutwiler if you were going eastbound or back towards Columbus, Mississippi. The ultimate construction price will probably be 10 times the amount, but we need to move forward with engineering to get that project moving. The next is continued expansion of our fiber optics network for $300,000. The next is the purchase of an ESD sidearm garbage truck at $425,000. It takes 12 to 18 months for delivery of these trucks. So we would like to go ahead and get a purchase in now for replacement of the truck. The next is, and I hate Ms. Howard walked out, but according to Para, the baseball field lights at McDonald Hughes Center need replacing. Para has sent Ms. Howard, and I put it in here in my budget, a cost of $500,000 to replace the lights at the McDonald Hughes baseball fields. Next is to basically refurbish the Veterans Memorial Parkway pedestrian bridge at $750,000. That's just to put it back to the standard, clean it up, try to get it repainted, get some of the fencing fixed, etc. I know this was a project the council asked that it not be included for demolition. So to bring it up to a standard is going to cost $750,000. The next project is Project Warrior. I know, Mr. Busby, you're familiar with this. You see that it's highlighted. If you will turn the page, I am recommending $300,000 from the general fund RFFI. And then on the second page, you will see under Alabama Trust Funds that I'm recommending an additional $450,000. ATF funds are usually meant for park or capital projects. So this would give Project Warrior a total investment of $750,000. The next recommendation is a turn lane eastbound on Hargrove and McFarland. This is the only lane at Hargrove and McFarland that doesn't have a dedicated turn lane for traffic to move eastbound on Highway 82. For those that travel that, especially in drive time hours, it backs up traffic all the way back to I still call it Meadowbrook Shopping Center, but Bama Mall, whatever it
Golf
is
course.
today. Whatever it is today. Not that $900,000 is a small amount, but again, one of the things we're looking at is how can we invest some smaller sums of money that create larger positive impacts for constituents. This is a project that will impact positively thousands of motorists a day at the intersection of Highway 82 and McFarland Boulevard. The next project is the continued facility maintenance improvements and security enhancements for $825,000. And I know Mr. Thompson will be more than excited to go through that with you. The next is the continued investment into our take-home vehicle policy. This has been something I know anecdotally from officers that I hear a lot of positive comments about. I will also say anecdotally, I see more patrol vehicles than I ever have in my career with the city throughout Tuscaloosa, which is a positive. We're also asking that be married with $585,000 of interest income we have from the American Rescue Plan Act. So that would give us a total for take-home vehicles of $1,085,532. I know, Mr. Busby, that's something that I know Chief is not here today, but at some point when you're ready to discuss, you want to move from anecdotal to quantifiable.
Right, I talked with Ms. Standridge in our conference about if that's what it is, that's what it is, but let's be prepared to go deep and specific on that.
I think that's more than fair, and I think we would welcome that opportunity. The next major recommendation is $1.75 million into the Public Safety Fund for RSA. As you know, in fiscal year 27, which is really October 1st, 2026, we will be making the transition from Police and Fire Pension Fund into RSA. Over the last 5 years, we have been strategically saving money basically in a savings account through we call it public safety fund to help us through that transition. We are good through fiscal year 27, but we need to continue to invest in that fund for fiscal 28, fiscal 29, fiscal 30, and so forth, or find new revenue items or continuing revenue items to get there. So we would certainly recommend 1.75 million to help us continue to save up for the RSA transition. The next is we're recommending $3 million to go into the neighborhood drainage fund. There are no specific drainage projects per se that are being recommended by me except one, which is through disaster recovery funds, which I'll talk about in a second. I know the council wants to have a bigger discussion regarding neighborhood drainage. I think there are many avenues for the council to look at and take on the bigger mega type when I say mega, projects $3, $4, $5, $6 million or more for drainage projects. So $3 million to me was a good opportunity to put in place a large appropriation that gives the council flexibility to either focus on smaller scale projects or to begin thinking about or contemplating a Noah's Ark 2.0, and this would give you good seed money to begin engineering on those larger scale projects. So the $3 million is, again, that's a subjective number on my part, but it gives the council flexibility for further discussions and ways to analyze, how we want to move forward. There only have one project per se that I'm recommending, and again, that's through disaster recovery funds. Next is $3.75 million for repaving. So if you look on the second page in the green box, that is combined with the gas tax funds that we anticipate to be $2,057,000. Plus, we have $1.5 million that will be left over from this year's or last year's paving contract, and 1.5 million left over from the fiscal 24 paving contract, 318,000 from the fiscal 25. That would give us 7.6 million in citywide paving. So that is a very healthy paving budget to get across the city. Like I've been talking about in this presentation, paving's one of those things. It does still cost a lot of money, but it has a lot of positive impact to a lot of people, and something to consider. Although I do not have it on, since it's disaster recovery funding, I do not have it on a spreadsheet for you, but we will be recommending with the remaining disaster recovery funds that we move forward at 1.8 million with the Downs drainage project. Mike and his team have looked at a redesign of that plan that we believe can accomplish the goals. The Downs neighborhood was in the disaster recovery zone, and since we have that 1.8 million remaining from federal appropriations, we think that is the best way to close out those dollars and make that project work. As you know, several years ago, we got a recommendation of a $4 million project out there. The remaining disaster recovery funds were not going to be enough to cover that. To Mike's credit, I said, let's go back, let's look at the data, let's see what we can do. And him and his team have come up with a solution that we think will work. And so I know Mike at some point will be happy to brief you on those details and give you a deeper analysis of what that looks like. I will say when it comes to drainage projects, us going back and taking a look is not a bad thing, because Mr. Busby, I'll give an example. You have on paper an $11 million drainage project. It might be cheaper to go seek voluntary buyouts than it is to do the overall.
We've already
project.
begun, I think.
Yes, sir. Sometimes we may have to approach it that way. Other times it may not be that simple. But I do think evaluating and reevaluating our options on drainage, because those are going to be your non-water and sewer, those are going to be your really expensive and intensive projects to be able to move forward. So that is the general fund and disaster recovery fund presentation. I want to switch gears and go to Elevate. We're trying to see if a Dunler Mifflin has a larger size of paper at their disposal. At this point, they do not, but let me walk you through the Elevate spreadsheet. So it's this one right here. So if you'll look at fiscal year 25 column, where you see the highlighted changes are the changes we're recommending to the Elevate budget. So going down the fiscal year 25 column in the revenue section, you see a change highlighting $5.95 million for the capital campaign. To date, our team has raised $28 million in private donations for the Savings Center. I can't say enough about Brant and Audrey, and certainly the Sabins who have led the charge. That is staggering above anything that we projected to begin with. And it's really to note with the Savings Center, it's going to be a nearly dollar per dollar match of city funds when the project ultimately moves forward. Again, that's something to be celebrated. The next is that through the funds that have been generated by with the work of Ms. Latish and Ms. Buck, we have generated $2.4 million in interest for the Savings Center. So you see that highlighted.
Is that off the state
The
25 million contribution?
Yes, sir. This off the state's contribution and what has been raised by the Savings Center Foundation, which is really Brant and Audrey in that team. So that interest income comes strictly just from those funding sources. The next highlight is we're recommending $800,000 more at Sokol Park, but this is really broad. $350,000 is for the expansion of the Mason's Place Park. In my discussions with Dean Mason, who's really kind of the chair who's been working with the Para Foundation, is that the city would be willing to potentially partner if the county and Northport partner. As you recall, the initial Mason's Place Park was a partnership between the county, Northport, and the city.
What was the total initial? Was it $1 million or more?
We did $500,000. The county did $500,000 in site development work. Northport did $250,000, and I want to say, Mr. Busby, that the Saban family contributed $250,000 into that project.
Okay.
The remaining dollars is for additional lights and cameras at Sokol Park North. Sokol Park North is probably one of our most heavily used parks. It's also one of our most pedestrian access parks. And so we would like to add additional lighting and cameras, and that cost is around $400,000. The next change that we have for you is regarding the fiscal 26 bond issue, and I want to note that you will see changes in how we've organized some of the bond issues. So the change that we're recommending is $5.2 million for fiscal year 26, which is roughly an $800,000 increase in a debt issuance for the fiscal 26 bond issue. But
I'm sorry, Mayor. Say that one more time, please.
It's an $800,000 increase from the last approved council reviewed Elevate budget.
Okay,
The
and
five- the
I'm
5.2
not being
million
dense there.
The $5.2 million
The
is
5.2 is more bond, not more interest, right?
So the
More
five,
cowbell?
the 5.2 million that is directed at the Saban Center under fiscal year 2025 is purely the increase to the Saban Center project line based off of the interest income and increased donations in that year. The 5.6 million in debt service that you see starting in fiscal 26 is actually down about 900,000 from the last approved council's Elevate spreadsheet.
I think rather than hold the flow up, we'll keep moving, but I need
She's
some
right,
remedial.
she's
course on that.
right, and I'm wrong. So I apologize for. Thank you, Carly. No, the 5.2 are the donations from the Savings Center, the increase there. The debt service at the 5.6 million is what we project for fiscal '26. And so if you'll turn the page, I think, and I apologize for making this
What
more
is,
confusing
Mr.
than
Mayor,
it should
what, or
be.
Carly, what is that bond payment based on? Borrowing how much money?
It's almost on the next page he's about to go over.
Okay.
So if you look at the third table down that has the light maroon color, with the Savings Center, we're projecting with the taxable and not, notice we have to, there's portion of this that's taxable, portion of this that's non-taxable. On the non-taxable portion of the debt, today we're looking at 62,000 per million. And for the taxable portion of that, 72,000 per million. So if you look at the projects that we have outlined, 66.5 million for the Savings Center, 3.6 million for the pickleball project. And this will just, as you know, we moved this project forward using our cash flow, knowing we'd reimburse ourselves through bond proceeds. A new addition to the fiscal year '26 is $7.5 million for the University Boulevard corridor. The budget projections have come back on the University Boulevard project in Alberta at about $5 million higher than budget. And we're recommending $7.5 million as a way to move that project on forward. We anticipate, we are working, as Mike Gardner will share with you when you have your briefing on this, that it stay under that $5 million. But I'm also, as we've talked about, the situation that we're dealing economically, the potential future impacts of tariffs, knowing that this project is probably 3 to 6 months from bid day, there's still a lot of uncertainty. And so we would recommend $7.5 million. And Mr. Busby, I think you would like this caveat to it, that if, let's say $5 million is the anticipated overage, the additional $2.5 million be put back towards the downtown university project west. So, because if we're running into,
You read my mind there.
so,
Although,
yeah. The first project out the door is going to be Mr. Tyner's project. And so it just may be that we need to get that cost estimate because there's a lot of similarities in the utility work, sidewalk, things of that nature. It'll give us a good cost basis. But that's the major change within this line item. And the next is the cash flow related to Odom Park, which we'll break ground next week, which we, again, thanks to the work of Ms. Standridge and her team, we're able to cash flow and we'll reimburse ourselves through this. So, Ms. Standridge, do you want to add anything to this for clarity's sake?
No, sir, unless there's a question, I'll just say a quick thing about the idea of taxable versus a non-taxable piece of the issuance. The Savings Center is going to be a fully taxable debt issuance. Just because we have done so much fundraising, there are so many opportunities with the Savings Center to actually do corporate style business ventures with it that I don't want us to ever be held up by the idea that we're doing a non-taxable debt issuance and not be able to make money off of the creation of this facility.
so the entire amount will be taxable.
The entire amount will be taxable, yes, sir.
And the 72,000 per million is calculated, presuming what rate?
So the last rate that I got from Mr. Garrison, I think that the taxable rate was at like 5.6% as an average amount.
Average over the various maturities?
Yes, sir. Over the 30 years.
Carly, what all is included in that $66 million?
I want to actually stand up at the podium just so I'm not yelling. The 66 million is made up of, and I can actually do a detail. The majority of it is, so the city of Tuscaloosa originally proposed and accepted to put in 42 million into the project. And so 42 million will make up a bulk of that 66. The rest of it is going to be, sorry, let me pull, did not have it up. Okay, so the last time that we presented to council, there was a fundraising capital campaign that was approximately at $18.5 million. And we had received in from the SC Foundation, cash pledges received of $6.5 million. So therefore, there was the 42 million and then the 11.9 million left over from donations. That totaled to about 55 million that we had gotten approved last year via the bond ordinance and reimbursement resolution. Since that time, they have gotten another 12.3 million in pledges. So that's getting added into that amount. So the total amount of the 66.5 is the 42 million from the bond issuance, the 12 million of donations that we had previously told council that we were going to be bonding for. We haven't received the cash in, and then the additional 12.5 that they have just now, well, not just, but over the last 8 months, have reported in for us.
I fell off the wagon partway through.
I'm sorry.
The 42 I get. I mean,
Mhm.
I thought I heard you say additionally the $12 million of privately raised donations we're going to be bonding for. Is that what you said?
Yes, sir. So
Why
because
would we be issuing bonds for money we're receiving as private donations?
we will not have received them in cash form prior to actually awarding the contract for the construction.
But as soon as they are received at Saban Center Foundation, by the following October, that will be transferred in toto
Yes.
to okay. So when you said bonding for, you were talking about bonding and anticipation.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, correct. That's more of a timeliness issue, and so people have told us that they're going to be donating this amount of money to the Savings Center. We're not going to get it in cash form, possibly 5-7 years into the future. So we will issue the bond now. They will then pay us, and it will go immediately towards debt service payments.
Toward the pay.
It goes towards debt service payment.
Yes, sir.
You won't-
So, for example, in fiscal year '24, we received $3.9 million. And so most of our agreements are 5 to 7 years. We do have some that stretch out 10, but the majority are in that 5 to 7 year payout window.
And
Yes.
what the mayor kind of just mentioned before is that we're sitting at around $30 million of pledged donations. We have gotten in hand already $6.5 million of that. So we'll be bonding the rest of that plus our original 42. That's where you get to the 66.5.
We've received the 3.9?
3.9 in fiscal '24, and we received some, I believe, in fiscal '23.
2.4 the year before.
2.4. So that puts us up at a 6.
6.5. Yeah. 6.5.
Okay.
$6,563,619 to be specific.
That's what I got as well.
Carla, the original money that the council spent for this property and the building, are we being reimbursed for that and that money, that $8 million, or is that just money that we've put in?
Same question.
Just money we put in?
Yeah, so the $8 million for property acquisition was paid via cash years ago.
All right, so we're not making any attempt to try to recoup that as project related and then funnel it back into city account. Okay.
No, sir.
And so the demo we paid out of Hyde as
cash.
well?
Correct.
Okay.
That was like, was that 850 or something?
Demo was like
Seven-
350.
350.
No, I thought it
Demo,
came in at 6, didn't it?
We budgeted.
demo was
750?
396,000.
Wow. Or maybe
that
we
demo contract came in
thought,
way
I
under
think we
bid.
thought it was gonna be more.
We thought it was gonna be
came in-
$1 million.
Came in under
I thought
budget.
it came in at 6. Okay.
So, we're in the process right now of the bid packages are out there,
Yes, sir.
correct? And they're due back when?
May 15th is bid day.
May 15th is bid day. So, how much time do we have to analyze that before we have to accept the bids after that?
I
60
want to say
days.
45, but I
A minimum of that, probably, right?
probably. No, I think a maximum of 45, but I don't know if they put 45 or 60 in the bid spec. So
I
I
think.
think it's still 45, I think.
I think
That's-
I was pretty 60 when I met
60.
with them.
and it may be, our goal would be to, I can tell you, our thinking as we discuss this internally is on the 22nd, we would like to be in a position to present it to you, certainly no adoption. Assuming you do not have any issues of, you've got two bidders that are so close, you just want to settle it out. With the goal of shortly, after we get through Memorial Day, then getting into the discussion of adoption in June.
This number that I'm assuming we're still holding tight on what we expect this number to be, correct? I mean,
As far as the
I mean-
cost estimate,
yeah, and I don't know, we don't necessarily have to discuss this right here, but I'm just saying, there's gotta be a number that we think this is gonna come back at, right? I mean,
We do.
Yeah,
We were very fortunate to have, I think, 6 bidders pre-qualify, which is a good, healthy number. Hopefully, we can get 4 to 6 of those to go to bid day on. Ms. Buck is going to be presenting next week the Saban Center project, because that's one of the largest projects in the city's history. And so I asked Mr. Busby, and I think I copied everyone on the email, is that we would like to dedicate next week's meeting just to the Saban Center. So we can drill in, answer all your questions, from financial to programmatic to everything in between.
I think that would be good. We've got a lot of other stuff to be discussed, but obviously the elephant in the living room, no pun intended, is that. So
Yeah.
I'm happy to devote dedicated time to a discussion of that. It'd be good.
and any other additive things to that would be discussed,
Yes.
right, once we get that bid, including, some of the other things that could happen. All that's
We feel
part of that
we're-
bid process.
unless something has changed in the last 12, 24 hours, we will be able to present everything that I think is exciting. We're ready. I think that's why you see, I think at this point, we're at $53 million. How much of private? 25 from the state, 28 from private sector. You've got $53 million of outside support. You don't get that unless you have something that is special, unique, and life-changing. And so we're really excited because you know about it. You've been briefed along the way. You get all the emails. I think our team is excited so the public can see exactly how transformative this project is. In 2019, when we proposed in the first Elevate budget, we proposed $60 million for an experienced venue. And I've still got a copy. I looked at it this morning. On April 19, 2019, the first budget we presented to the council was $60 million on an Elevate experienced venue project. None of us could dream then that this would be the experienced venue project as part of Elevate. I think you will be as impressed as I've been, and hope emails and telephone conversations don't do justice to what I think Audrey's team is going to show you next week. Any more questions on that or fiscal 26? Because I do need to talk about fiscal 27 and fiscal 30.
Well, are you gonna go into this last sheet on the River District Fund
Yes,
as
sir.
well? Okay.
Yes, sir. So fiscal 27, we're pushing Mr. Fell to have the Bowers Park done. This would be really the in addition to the pickleball courts. This would be a new Belk Center is basically what we're talking about. I know something you work very hard on. You see a placeholder for TCL terminal. This is one that we're working with our federal partners. This could be something that happens in fiscal '27. It could be something that does not. We did have it in, I think, in the fiscal '26. We moved it to fiscal '27. We're just gonna have to see if we're able to land the grant for the terminal. Northern Riverwalk, Mr. Crow, Phase 2. This would stretch from Randall Park all the way back to McWright's Ferry Road. And then next is the Greensboro Avenue project, Mr. Busby. This one will be ready to go. It is less complex than the other downtown projects. And this would be from Fitz Street back to, excuse me, not Fitz, one back 7th, back to University Boulevard. So that's fiscal '27. With the Greensboro Avenue project, it is something that if we did do, Mr. Busby, we would want to let that project and probably we want to go to bids this time next year, or really before this time next year, so the majority of the work could be done during the summer months. Now, next you see fiscal '30. As you know, as you heard last week in the briefing that we provided, we've got challenges coming up with RSA, with SSUT, and as we discussed last week, everything that we're doing today, we can do. Like Sabin Center, like Northern Riverwalk, like Greensboro Avenue, like Bowers Park, like Alberta, University Boulevard, Alberta. But we do need to, as we work through RSA transition and SSUT, we would recommend that we do pause some projects to see how the next 24 months work. And so those projects are Skyland Boulevard, Queen City Park, Phelps Center, and McDonald Hughes Center. Again, this is not saying that they will not get started to fiscal year '30, but I would like to provide some breathing space as we see how this transition works with RSA, to see if we can find some finality on solving the SSUT issue. You will also see that I moved the amphitheater $6 million that we had in a fiscal '26 bond issue out. So, but I've kept that in, but I've put it in a different funding source. So if you turn over and you look at the River District funding source, and you go to the expenditure table under upgrade, repair, and maintenance, I'm recommending in fiscal '26, fiscal '27, and in fiscal '28, $2 million a year for first round of upgrades to the Mercedes-Benz amphitheater. So take that out of a bond issue and pay for it in cash. The River District Fund right now is healthy. The amphitheater is an eligible expense. Again, this is just precautionary. I think it's a way we need to continue our improvements to the amphitheater. This is a way to do it through the River District Fund. The River District Fund is funded by what we project to be annual fundraising for the Sabin Center, lodging 2% of the lodging tax revenue, Elevate Operation and Maintenance Fund, and interest income. So that may be something that you guys want to talk about in more detail through your budget hearings, but we think this is a very good way to go about it. And I do want to start here and then work backwards. If you go down to the bottom line and you look at revenues over expenditures, kind of, well, what's our balance in these funds at the end of the day? So if you project out to 2033, we project a balance of $7,237,000 in the River District Fund. If you go to your Elevate spreadsheet, so if you turn back over, if you adopted every single one of my recommendations today, in 2033, that'll be Mr. Tyner's 8th or 9th term by then. I've lost count, Mr. Tyner, how many, and I'm not far behind you.
Should be starting at 8.
Just be starting at 8. we estimate a balance of 7.9 million in Elevate Fund. So you see that we're keeping healthy reserves in these funds. But at the same time, we do think we need to strategically pause on those projects that really haven't made it out of the gate yet. Let's see how the next 24, 48 months go, and then we can recalibrate. At the meantime, you still get a lot of projects delivered in every single district of this city, which is good for every council member and good for our citizens ultimately who pay our salaries. We will be happy to answer any questions that you may have on Elevate General Fund. And Mr. Busby, I appreciate the extraordinary amount of time you've given us to present this, and we look forward to the coming weeks.
No, thank you very much, you and the staff, for the thought and work that goes into that. I think my comments at the macro level would be certainly the capital projects. It hits a lot of the big spaces in the room. I think what I would ask, since this is you and I, and we've talked about some of this conceptually moving forward. We had a discussion bouncing around in the back of a police car one night on some more of it, but then, this.
By the way, we weren't being jailed.
Yeah, no,
Make that clear.
yeah, you were actually in the front seat. I think if the other members are okay with it, what I'd suggest is that we now take time to immerse ourselves in it, talk amongst ourselves, socialize some of the ideas in here among our constituents, and then we will come back with a list of questions and comments and thoughts on it.
Are you good with the schedule we proposed?
I saw you sent out an email. Essentially, here's what I think we will end up doing. There's going to be some of these as we go through here that just aren't that hard. Pass. And then it is the remainder that we will do. I'll have to go back and look at the specific schedule, but it is the remainder that we will have to program into the finance committees to work through, those that are going to require some work.
Absolutely. And let us know in the meantime what you need from us, any information, details.
I will probably schedule a separate session with Ms. Standard. Again, my remedial class, but I will. And
Thank you.
Mr. Crowe, Mr. Wilson, are y'all okay with that, or is there?
Sure.
I think we're a good bit. Well, we're some over that, huh? It's okay. Norman?
It's good.
Okay. And remembering that we still actually have a schedule today.
You got yours?
No, take it.
No, this is mine.
All right, with that, we will move on to item number 2 under new business. Ms. Gilmore, authorization to submit a transportation alternatives program grant application for Ash Street sidewalk.
Good afternoon, counselors. How are
Good
y'all?
afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So, like Counselor Busby said, we are seeking authorization to apply for a TAP grant for the Ash Street Sidewalks project, which will connect the Benjamin Lawrence YMCA to Colton Park with a multi-use path. The TAP grant is a federal program that requires a 20% match from the city. And so what we're proposing is that we request $710,000 from the federal funding portion, and that the local cost would be $517,000. That includes the 20% match plus some of the costs associated with the project that are not eligible for federal funding. And that brings the total project cost to $1.2 million.
So, first of all, I think congratulations are in order, right? Second of all, I think this had a sort of a tumultuous time. Its first pass around. Mr.
That's how
Crowe,
we haze and people get promoted to positions, we haze them appropriately.
you've got the TAP grant.
Yes,
Is-
so Bill is here to provide an update on the scope of the project. So I think the original concern was the cost over budget for the scope of the project. So now we're proposing a project with a slightly altered scope, where all of the city funding is budgeted for the match and the cost over eligible.
Okay, proceed.
So this 1.2 is the change number from the 1.8,
Yes, sir.
and that 500 is what we
So-
talked about many months ago.
Yeah, so it's 500,000, which is budgeted in the general fund. And then we also had an additional 154,000 budgeted in the local streets for District 2.
Okay.
So putting that together, we actually have a little bit of wiggle room in the available funding
To
for
help us
this.
to make sure we get it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, she did good. Did a great job.
That's good.
Great job. She worked it.
Wow, if you only knew how much smoother this is going the second time around. Bill, is there anything that you want to address on this with us?
So, sir, to your point, if you do recall the project from last year, and as Sarah mentioned, the intention to get it within the available funding. Previously, the project was to go from MLK, running approximately east-west across Ash Street, and then connecting to Carlton Park. Just to reduce the scope, what we've done is scaled back to a single-side sidewalk. So it's not both sides of the sidewalk. And I can use some visuals.
Yeah.
So orientation again, just to the southwest here from City Hall, and the location that we're talking about here. So the brown dirt area, previous Benjamin Barnes, now the Benjamin Barnes YMCA, and then to the center right of the screen, the arched area, that's Carlton Park, and the project location shown by those yellow boxes. So this next graphic, what's in gray represents the previous footprint of the proposed project. Sidewalks on both sides of the street going from MLK, hanging on the left there, and then up to Carlton Park. To reduce the scope, what we've done is we're proposing now what's clouded out in the red circled area. And so really meets the intent of accessing the neighborhood amenities of Benjamin Barnes YMCA and Carlton Park, both recent improvements for the neighborhoods. Safe access back and forth by a sidewalk, 5-foot sidewalk that will connect the two locations. And then the larger footprint that you see about center to the bottom there, that accommodates some improved parking, which right now is just dirt and parking curbs, so we're gonna have some paved parking. And also ADA compliance throughout. So to Sarah's credit, one thing that we did do when they announced that the grant was gonna be eligible, which just happened at the end of March, immediately got on the phone with Aldot and talked to him about, hey, our application last year, unsuccessful. Why is that? What should we learn? What do we need to improve? Got feedback that the project was good. It was just the volume of projects that they got submitted last year just exceeded the dollars available. So they gave us good feedback that the project has high likelihood of success. We did talk about reducing the scope. That didn't seem to affect their interest in the project. They were just as interested if it was going to be still achieving the objective of connecting those two locations and the ADA compliance. They recommended we emphasize that in the application, but the feedback was essentially same project, same package, and we would have a high likelihood of success. So just to bring it back to the original point, all we're really asking for approval here today is just the ability to apply for the grant.
Bill, related question. We were having big issues with parking, and I know, to your point, we've added parking in that area, if I remember correct. But there were also updating and doing a bunch of parking work at the Fred campus, that was all going on. And whatever happened with that, Mike? I mean, has that helped us? Or is that maybe coming?
So what I think you are referring to is in the Benjamin Barnes YMCA project, the footprint of the building, the loss of parking on the campus itself.
Yeah.
We initially thought we were going to be able to engage and use some of the parking
Fred.
on the Fred campus.
They were about to redo. whatever.
That's right. As we developed that plan and communicated with them, we learned that they had a renovation program that they were gonna start. If you remember, we had a pedestrian walkway that was gonna be connectivity. That was gonna be our means of providing some additional parking at that campus. What we ultimately ended up doing was delaying the installation of that connective pedestrian walkway and built a parking lot. Just
Because of the pending construction, we stopped that.
that is correct.
Because that would
On
have
the-
that would have been torn up or something would have happened,
Yes, sir,
right?
that is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
But only because of the pending construction,
That's-
so like, we still have an opportunity to rework that. bid.
So that would be up to Shelton, I think, to make the final
Does he
decision
need
on that.
parking?
Yeah, and parking has always been an issue. I remember 8 years ago, I had my first community policing, event there. And so we were parking on the right of way. I just wanna be clear, parking has always been an issue. I can see some light at the end of the tunnel with how the parking lot is constructed now, but additional parking would always be great.
That's good. Thank you.
Okay. Gentlemen, there are additional questions, comments?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Item is approved. Let's see, Gilmore, see you're still up, authorization to apply for no match grant, 2025 State Homeland Security Grant Program. Thermal imaging cameras.
Yes, sir. So the State Homeland Security Grant Program is administered through ALEA. It's a FEMA grant administered through ALEA. ALEA's application is open, and this is a no-match grant. So if we were awarded this grant, the city would not be responsible for providing any match costs.
Okay, any
So this
questions?
is a funding request of $135,000.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Item is approved. Ms. Gilmore.
Same thing, separate arm of this grant program for public safety rather than for fire.
Where would the barrier system go? Have we identified that?
I've got Captain Cronister for that question.
Absolutely, sir.
So the barrier system would be used for pretty much any city events. Priority would be to Government Plaza
Are
area.
there the movable barriers?
Yes, sir. They're, we actually,
These are not bollards.
so they're similar to what UA has on campus right now, not the bollard style, but they're sort of an L shape, very heavy piece of steel. They come on a trailer, for so many on a trailer, and deploy them out.
All right.
Did we get a grant like this last year,
2 years ago.
2 years ago?
Yes.
Was it similar money?
This,
No, I mean,
that was a fire grant 2 years ago. I think it was similar to their request, but we have not gotten a public safety grant through this particular program yet.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Item is approved. Ms. Standridge, General Fund Reserve for Future Improvements Budget Revision Number 10.
Thank you, council. This budget revision is to budget the project that was briefed to the committee and projects for a joint funding agreement with UA for the for the construction of phase 2 at Hackberry and University Boulevards for the utilities.
Okay.
It's $1 million that we are going to be cost reimbursed from the University of Alabama. So we are just budgeting the revenue and then the corresponding expense for the project.
Gotcha. Gentlemen, any questions or comments?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, Ms. Standridge, 2022A Budget Revision Number 3.
Yes, sir. We are requesting to move $85,000 that is in available funding from the Burrell Odom Park line that was not needed to complete the project into the Tuscaloosa Tennis Center to be able to fund owner-required furnishings. Mr. Thompson is here to detail any of those owner-required furnishings if you would like to have any of the information. But it is $85,000 total that was needed in the Tuscaloosa Tennis Center. The Burrell Odom Park project had it available after construction was completed.
Mr. Thompson, welcome.
Hi there, Counselor. How are you?
What is owner-required
So it's
furnishings?
tables, chairs, and benches. Throughout all these projects, there are certain items that we found just to meet our standard, so we have a uniform tables and chairs across the board for all our parks. It's easier for us to purchase them and then give them to the contractor to install. So it's new tables and chairs inside the tennis.
Surely
facility.
furnishings and fixtures were a part of what we approved funding and implementing, right?
So they were part of it. We were able to award the contract to the contractor, but there were still some owner-supplied furnishings that we needed a little bit more money for.
All right, so I'm a little bit, so is this more than we originally approved or part of what we originally approved?
So this was not part of what was in the contract that went to the contractor who's out on site right now.
Why not?
Because it's easier for us to purchase the tables
Easier.
and chairs and the benches.
Okay, so what we paid him then
Probably cheaper.
was reduced by at least that amount for not having him do it?
Yes, sir. So, we do this also with a lot of the cameras and things like that because we want something that's gonna communicate with our, systems. It is the same thing for several other, we do a lot of this with some of the sprinkler or the irrigation, pieces as well. It's just so that we have a uniform set going across the board, across the city, so our people can work on it and we have replacement parts. It's easier for us just to have some owner, furnished things such as this.
Okay, and the 85,000 is coming left over from Odom Park?
Yes, sir.
And did that just miraculously match the amount of the
Yeah.
furniture or what?
Eric, I wanna know, could you have done anything else with that 85,000?
There's still available funds in the Berlin Park
Okay.
line item,
Yes.
that when we get to close
Yeah,
out,
okay.
we will
Well, lights,
probably
camera,
will
action.
flow back into contingency.
You're good, but not that miraculously good.
Oh, no.
It's an Easter miracle.
Thank you.
A
We need a few-
Festivus
we need
miracle.
we need a few more of those, Walt.
Gentlemen, are there any other questions or comments?
Motion. Approved.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Item is approved. Is there any other business to be brought before Finance Committee today? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?